Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Constance Wrigley-Thomas and I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Institute of Food Science and Technology, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar. If you haven't already, please visit CIFST's website for a list of upcoming webinars, which will continue weekly into July. And if you are a member of CIFST, registration for the entire webinar series is free. Today's topic is crisis marketing, learn how to rapidly generate new customers and revenue taken by COVID-19. Our speaker is Jeremy Miller. Before we kick off today's session, however, I wanted to mention that if you have any questions, you can write them in the question box and I will moderate any questions at the end and our speaker will attempt to answer them before the end of the webinar. I would now like to introduce our speaker. Jeremy Miller is a globally recognized branding expert and the best-selling author of Sticky Branding and Brand New Name. And I happen to be owners of both his books, and here they are. His blend of humor, stories, and actionable ideas will inspire you to innovate and grow your business and brand. Jeremy can tell you in vivid detail what every recession, starting with the 1989 market crash, is like. He has learned through real boots on the ground experience. Jeremy has embarked on a decade-long study of how companies grow recognizable, memorable brands. After the coronavirus, Jeremy and the Sticky Branding team have focused all their attention on helping business owners and their teams conquer the crisis by adjusting their business strategies and value propositions to find new customers and sources of revenue taken by COVID-19. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Miller.
Thanks, Constance. Wow, what a great introduction. And it feels like a live event. So I'm so delighted to be here today and part of today's experience in this ongoing webinar series. I think you're putting on fantastic programming and ideas, especially at a time that we are all going through that is in so much change and diversity. And I want to bring forward today some ideas and some strategies and stories that will inspire and bring hope from what is largely a difficult moment in time. Now, before we get into this, I'd like to just do a quick few asks. So we have the chat in the little window on the right. You'll see that there's a chat window and a questions tab. And if you look at the chat, take some time and introduce yourself to each other. Let's have some ongoing dialogue. So what I'd ask is introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, tell us what your company or brand is. And the reason for this is when I look at my work before coronavirus, I am a keynote speaker, and I'm the kind of speaker that loves to create engagement and games and activity and table talks. But in this medium today, it's almost stunted. I'm missing that because it's like broadcast television. I'm talking to a camera, I have no feedback, and you're kind of consuming it. But you have an opportunity to dialogue and chat with each other. So let's take that opportunity to do that. Engage in the chat, introduce yourself, share what you're learning, and have a conversation while I'm speaking. I won't know, so this is a perfect opportunity for added layers of experience. And as Constance said, there's a question section. So as I'm talking, if something strikes you, if you want to go deeper on it, or even you have a specific question to your business, post the questions. We're going to take some time near the end to try and open the floor to any kind of dialogue that we're doing. So let's take this moment and build on it because we're very much in this moment of a brave new world. We're going to look back at 2020 very much as a BC AC moment. And it's not really, we can think of it as in the biblical terms, but really it's before coronavirus, after coronavirus. And this dividing line is going to be a memory and something for us for really ever. We are all going to remember where we were in 2020 and how things have shifted. And for me, this dividing line has been something very personal and something that hit a lot of memories and experiences that I haven't thought about in well over a decade. As Constance mentioned, I grew up in a family business in the recruiting sector. And my parents' business or my family's business would go up and down with the economy. And with that, I can remember all the recessions that we have been going through since that market crash in 1989 and that recession that followed in the early 90s. Now, for me, that was my formative years. I was a teenager, but I remember the challenges my parents went through, from laying off employees and downsizing and closing offices, but also just the personal sacrifices that they went through. It sounds really odd to say, and it's weird for me to talk about it now, but the thing that I remember most in that period of time was being a kid in school, and my class went on a class trip to Chicago, and I didn't get to go because my parents couldn't afford it. So I spent 5 days in the classroom by myself, and it's kind of like this sad moment for me, but it's also surreal to talk about it now, because it really wasn't all that bad. But it's the things that you remember, and these are the kind of sacrifices that we're all going through right now. Now, I joined my family's business at a trough. We timed it based on what we knew of the recessions and the impact they would have on our business. But from the moment I joined my family's business, we were thinking about the next recession, and we were contingency planning for it. We didn't know when it would happen. We didn't know how it would happen or how bad it would be. We just knew through our history that the economy is cyclical, and every time it goes sideways or goes down, we go down too. And so we made a commitment from the point I joined the business that we were never going to go through what we had done in the past. And we built a strategy well ahead of the 08-09 recession. And in that period, the strategy worked. We had no slippage in sales. In fact, we grew. We brought on a new customer a week while the rest of our industry was in carnage and decline. And that strength actually allowed us to sell the business in 2013. Now, I hadn't thought much about this. I've never written about this story or shared it before March 11th. But what happened for me was, when they made the travel advisory bans in March 11th, and we could see by March 16th the layoffs were beginning, I could see right away, just from that programming and where I grew up in, that we were being thrown into a recession. And I went to our clients and said, this was my experience at Leap Job, and this is what I foresee in our strategy work, that we could see a decline of revenue by 30 to 50%. And we followed these job numbers, and the declines in April were just so jarring. 20 million people filing for unemployment in the United States, blowing away every previous record. And we've all seen just what's going on. But this became a very purpose-driven moment for me, and I felt like I've taken everything I learned from family business and everything I've done as a consultant and as an author and a speaker, and we transformed my business to rise to the occasion. So today, what I would say is sticky branding works with companies to help them slingshot out of the crisis. And what we're trying to do is two strategy horizons. One is, how do you recover the customers and revenue taken by COVID-19? And then second, how do you slingshot out? How do you come out of this thing stronger than ever? And so in today's talk, what I'd like to do is share with you some of the stories and strategy models and lessons that we have taken from the last 12 weeks, because this has been a highly fluid situation, and we're pioneering new ideas and strategy at a pace I've never seen before. And in that, there are some real exciting opportunities for hope and recovery and growth. So let's get into this. So the first thing I just want to say is, this is a beautiful moment in time. The last 2 weeks alone, we have seen a substantial uptick in activity and sales and marketing across multiple sectors. And if you think about it, it's this reopening. When you look outside, when I look outside, it's spring in the air. It feels like summer actually, but our gardens are coming alive, the trees and flowers are blossoming, and it's good to feel that energy. But we have the same thing happening in the economy. We're seeing the easing of social distancing and stay-at-home orders. Businesses are reopening, and that sense of hope is emerging. And people, after being locked up for the last 3 months, are coming back with a degree of energy and vigor like never before. But with this, we're also seeing green shoots. We're seeing new opportunities emerge that didn't exist 90 days ago before coronavirus. And a green shoot is a new need. And what's so interesting right now is many of today's new needs will become tomorrow's markets. And that is a huge opportunity for each and every one of us. So let me give you an example. In the 2002-2003 SARS pandemic in China, it created the rise of e-commerce. Well, just like we are today, millions of people were forced to stay at home, so they started to do online shopping. But China embraced, because of this, e-commerce a decade before the rest of the world. And that created the rise of giants like Alibaba. But today we're going through the exact same thing in Canada and the United States. We've been locked up in our homes. We're dealing with social distancing. And as a result, we are seeing new needs and new habits emerge all around us, from e-commerce to curbside pickup to having these virtual conferences. Before, I would have seen you and spoken to you at a live event. Today, we're having communication and experiences through all these new mediums. Now, many of these mediums and these tools existed well before the lockdowns. What's happened is our need and our commitment to them has shifted. Just take curbside pickup. 6 months ago, the idea of that would have been a novelty. But after you've tried it now, you've been forced to try it due to the issues we faced it, but after trying it, can you imagine having that taken away? It's amazing. Once you've tried some of these things, they're going to become permanent habits. And that's what a green shoot is. And what we have across every sector is, this goes well beyond e-commerce and curbside pickup and some of these types of things. We are seeing green shoots of opportunity in every single sector. Let me give you a random example. Since the start of this crisis, construction workers have been walking off job sites because they perceive the porta potties as unhygienic and unsafe. Now, before coronavirus, you could have said they're unhygienic and unsafe and nobody would have batted an eye at you. The last thing you want to do is spend time in one of those things. But after coronavirus, it can actually be deadly. The CDC has said that that coronavirus can be transmitted and distributed via human waste. So rightfully so, construction workers have a right to be concerned. And as a result, they have been demanding these facilities cleaned a lot more, upwards of 3 to 5 times a day. Before coronavirus, that might have happened only once or twice a week. And just imagine the ripple effect that one new need creates. From it just starts out with the service companies. Now they're coming on to the job sites 3 to 5 times a day, which means they have to keep their trucks on the road that much more, which means they have to hire more drivers. But they're also wearing out their equipment faster, which means they need new tires and brakes and hoses and valves and pumps and everything else. And so their distributors and service companies are being called on more often, which means the distributors are calling and buying from the manufacturers more, and the OEMs are building more trucks. And in one small need, the people's need to poop safely, an entire supply chain has been activated with demand that far outstripped anything that we could have seen before coronavirus. And so this idea of pivoting is actually something that I would argue against. What we're looking for is ripples of change that we can evolve and go after. And one of the greatest ripples that we have is happening right now, which is, how do employers reopen safely? So we have all of this need that comes out from that, but it extends to every sector of the economy. We can be very creative and look at all of the opportunities all around us. So how do you find these? Well, I like to ask 3 key questions in crisis marketing. The first is, who needs your company and its expertise the most right now? Second, what products or services can you deliver to solve real problems that are valued? Third, how can you proactively sell and deliver your services to the people with the most need? And when you do this, you start to get to something that is hyper relevant. That is, what do people actually need? And this is what COVID has really caused us to do, is how do we really shift our thinking to be generous and helpful? Because when we look at it, new needs are green shoots. And by simply shifting your lens and thinking about things more creatively and open-mindedly, we start to see incredible opportunities. And so how do you do this? Where do you start to look? Well, at Sticky Branding, we use a very simple tool called a market model development process. And in this, where we look is in 2 key areas. The first is in recovery. And the way we do that is you look to your existing customers and your existing products and services, and you ask, how do we evolve what we're doing so that we're relevant right now? If that means offering e-commerce or curbside pickup or other ways to help serve someone who can't open right now, then that's a great way to do that. But once you start to master that, the real opportunity goes, how do you find new opportunities? And the way I like to frame this is, look to the corners. So the first corner might be, how do we take our core products and services to new markets? Or how do we provide new products and services to our existing customers? And in that, you start to find the green shoots. And this is your opportunity. When you look to the corners, you start to see more possibilities for your business that you never saw before. And because the coronavirus is a shared experience, you have total permission to go after them, because you can say to customers, I didn't do this before, but because of coronavirus and because of what's going on right now, we're offering this service right now. And you have permission to chase opportunities you didn't have 90 days ago. Now, if this idea intrigues you, we have a tool at Sticky Branding called the Green Shoots Worksheet. And if you send me an email, I'll send it back to you. It's just a simple PDF exercise that you can use with your leadership team to identify new needs, and then how do you adjust your value proposition and services to find them. And if you want to get them right away, if you go to stickybranding.com, under the guides, you'll see that there's the Green Shoot worksheets there too. But send me an email, jeremy@stickybranding.com, and I'll be sure to send you this tool so you can apply these ideas. So this is kind of the framing that we have for today. Is we are in a moment in time where there is new needs, there is new opportunities, and the question and the opportunity for each and every one of us then is, how do we go after it? So I'd like to share with you at this point a few principles on what we are learning so far in terms of how companies are going after this and what you can do to apply this in your own business. And I'll share with you some examples from multiple different industries of just inspiring companies that are doing great work right now. So the first key message that I have for you is, you gotta be hyper relevant. COVID has created this very interesting moment in time where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of anxiety, and we have to market ourselves carefully. You've got to speak directly to the customer's need and what they're experiencing right now. Because here's the risk. Your brand won't survive if it's perceived as opportunistic or icky, but it will thrive if it's perceived as helpful. We're in this heightened state of anxiety right now, and so it's the relevance that's going to help you cut through the clutter. And small mistakes can become exponentially worse simply because we are in a state of fear. It's like we've been compressed down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and our safety concerns are being affected, from our personal security, employment, our health. In many respects, it feels like we're fighting not only for our health, fighting for our lives, both for our health and our business. And we can see these anxieties ripple out everywhere. The social unrest going on right now throughout the world, especially in the United States, related to the riots and those issues, and that compounded with COVID. This is a sensitive time. And so small mistakes can be very detrimental. I'll give you one example, I'll come back to it, is if you are a CrossFitter. On Saturday, the founder of CrossFit made a very boneheaded comment on Twitter, where he accused someone, or saying, he made a tweet that said, "It's Floyd 19." And it came across as vaguely racist and inappropriate. And within the last 3 days, he's been forced to step down. CrossFit has lost their title sponsorships with Reebok, and 1,000 of their CrossFit affiliates have dropped out. This might have passed over before coronavirus, but when you make mistakes that come across as opportunistic or icky, it's brutal. But you don't have to face that if you focus on the need and being helpful. So let me give you an example. There's a manufacturer in Ottawa called Healthcraft Products that makes fall prevention devices and equipment. If you're watching the video, you'll see there's a person giving a demo of a super bar and a super pole. These are piece of equipment that you can put in any room of your house so that you can get up and move around safely. But Healthcraft makes a variety of products from bed rails to beautiful fixtures that would go into your home. And so they have a very deliberate place in this world, but they're also incredibly purpose-driven. At the start of the crisis, John O'Brien, the founder and CEO, said to me, in a crisis, the mortality rate in hospitals increases by 2 to 5 times. And the number one reason that a senior citizen, the person who's most at risk right now, could be admitted to a hospital is due to an accidental fall in their home. And that insight was incredibly powerful for the team because it shifted their mindset. While their dealers and their contractors and their distributors were unable to operate, they were forced to rise up and ask the question, how do we prevent people from having an accidental fall? How do we get our products out into the market in a time of absolute urgency and need? And so marketing wasn't a question of selling product and service. It was about serving customers and seniors and preventing more deaths. And this simple shift in mindset not only gave the team purpose, it gave their marketing purpose, and it gave them permission to speak to someone specifically of why they were trying to help and serve them. And they put a whole suite of products and services and campaigns together because this became the focal point of what Healthcraft meant after COVID-19. And you have this type of opportunity too. You can find needs everywhere. So look for the shifting needs. What has changed after coronavirus? Start with your customers. What's going on and what's shifting there? Then look to your competitors. What are the opportunities there? There is competitive weaknesses right now, from supply chain issues to companies that are overcutting to even some that were over leveraged before the coronavirus that are really struggling now. These might be brilliant opportunities for you. But also look internally. We're going to hit on this theme a few times today, that there is immense opportunity by looking internally at the plans and ideas that you had before coronavirus, and then looking at how you can bring them forward much more rapidly because they are so relevant right now. This is your opportunity. But the challenge I think we all wrestle with, though, is once you identify a need, how do you promote it? How do you market it? Well, in some ways, it's easier than ever. We were facing an incredible challenge before coronavirus, which was the collapse of digital marketing, especially for business to business. And what I had been focused on before this was doing an analysis and a study of the shifting trends of digital marketing's impact on sales. And what we had done is looked at a series of perennial marketing programs over a 5-year period. And what we saw by the end of 2019 was that it was taking 10 times the effort to deliver a similar or declining return on investment. And what that meant was we were seeing less lead generation and activation for 10 times the effort, whether it was in budget or volume of posts or content, everything else. You're producing that much more to get to a similar outcome. And it has been getting so bad up before coronavirus that, according to Moz, they did a research study of over 1 million articles, and they found that 50% of articles being published have no likes, shares, comments, and probably no views. So if you look at your marketing and 50% of the content being produced is not even being seen, that is a heartbreaking scenario, because that was the situation that we were seeing going into this year. And this was going to actually be the theme of what I was planning to talk about for most of this calendar year. And the reason that we have been going through all of these issues is a concept called content shock. We are now producing more content than there are human hours in the world to consume it all. We actually produce more content in a 24-hour cycle than there are human hours to consume it. So if you took everything that was produced in the world yesterday for Netflix and Instagram and all the digital channels, and we gave it to everybody in the world to consume, we couldn't consume it all in that same 24-hour period. That delta has now been crossed. And as a result, our marketing strategies are starting to atrophy. And there's been two realms of thought that have really wrapped around this, especially before coronavirus, is how do you overcome this situation when your content's not being seen? Well, at the one extreme, there's people like Gary Vaynerchuk that are proclaiming to produce more. What Gary says is, if you're not producing 100 pieces of content per channel per day, you're leaving the greatest opportunity on the world on the table. Now, for me, I'm going to call BS. I totally disagree. This is a race to the bottom. Before coronavirus, it was a bad idea. After coronavirus, it's a worse idea. What we are actually seeing today is that marketing as a general concept is losing its potency for a variety of reasons. The biggest being that there's too much content, people are in a state of fear, and decision-making autonomy has moved up the organizational ladder. So what do you do about this? Well, I like a more of a specific and focused approach. Wayne Gretzky's got that brilliant quote, "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been." And that's what we really want to try and go after, is how do we skate to where the puck is going to be, or how do we skate to where the customer is going to be? The problem is, even before coronavirus, we didn't have that good approach to it. What I always think of is marketing looks a lot like pee-wee hockey. And I love watching these little kids. They're so fun and cute as they fall over each other. But that's what our marketing is like. When you treat every customer the same, every campaign the same, it's like a bunch of little kids skating around the ice, falling all over each other, and no one takes a shot on net. And as a result, we don't see the lead generation or the marketing effectiveness that we expect. So what do you do about it? Well, after coronavirus, it's about being focused. Sell high, which means go to the highest point in the organization that has the decision-making tree and work on that. Because what's happened as a result of the downsizing and layoffs is managers have largely lost their autonomy. So if you sell currently, if the executive decision maker is a business owner, that's the person you need to sell to. If you are on selling to larger corporations and providing ingredients or guidance in terms of how you're supporting their campaigns, you got to sell to the executive level. Whoever is controlling the budget is the key people to be engaging with. The other side of this from a consumer perspective, though, is, again, it's speaking directly to the need and directly to why somebody is buying. And I like to ask that question, who knows of a need first? If you think of your marketing, you're going to speak directly to the person who's going to make the purchase decision, or you're going to speak to the person who is going to influence and refer you. And if you focus on those two markets, you can take the complexity of your marketing dramatically, you can be hyper relevant, you can be focused, and you can get to the result that you want. And this is the exciting part of all that's going on, is everything is moving so much faster because you can go to the decision maker and you can make a decision. What we're finding today is that COVID-19 is actually an accelerant, not a change agent. And this is an interesting thing to think about. If you think of all the green shoots that I've been discussing through this talk, they all existed. All the technologies, all the tools, all the ideas were there before coronavirus. The only difference is they're being accelerated and pushed into our businesses at a pace of unprecedented levels. And for the companies that move fast and adapt faster, they're the ones that have the advantage. So let me give you an example from more of a retail perspective, who's just done exceptionally well. Element Fitness is one of Canada's largest CrossFit gyms. Actually, due to what I talked about in terms of the CrossFit issues earlier, Element is changing their name from Element CrossFit to Element Fitness because of what's happened. So just an added layer of complexity. Now, as you can see in the video, this Element is a place where you go to get sweaty. This is a great gym environment. It's very community driven, and it has exceptional programming and engagement. But as you can imagine, after coronavirus, they can't operate this facility. They were shut down by March 13th. They were one of the first to go. But let me give you their results and then I'll talk about how. So what happened to them? Well, this is the shocking part. Element has maintained a 92% member retention rate at full fee, so at $200 per month, members are still paying, with a 9.8 net promoter score, so a 9.8 member satisfaction out of 10. And what's even more incredible is through April, they have been adding green shoots and their revenue has actually increased to above pre-coronavirus levels. All the while, not one member has been into the gym in over 12 weeks. So how have they done this? Well, it's come down through strategy and framing. Alex Sabiri, who is the founder, said he went to his team on March 11th and 12th when this was first emerging. He said, how do we recreate the class experience virtually? But what he did afterwards, after that statement, was really what was truly inspiring, because he said, a framing question. He said, we're not in the equipment rental business, we're in the coaching and community business. And he went on to say that most gyms perceive themselves as being in the equipment rental business. So you buy a membership, you go to a space, you use the equipment, you leave. He said, what makes Element brilliant and what makes us great at what we do isn't the fact that we have equipment and barbells and all of this stuff. It's the people, it's the coaching, it's the members, it's the way we are all organized. And so how do we create the magic that goes on inside of the facilities online? So like everybody, they put their programming online for free right away. That was the first thing, but that was table stakes. Where the true innovation came from was their foresight and how they could connect to the need. So the first thing they did is they created a home coach program, and they assigned each member a dedicated coach to check in with them daily, send them a text or an email, tailor the programming, invite them into events, and make sure they were participating, because that was lost as part of closing the gym. And they've then continued to innovate every single week. For example, now they have evening programming. Every night they have a community event they're all at 7:30 at night, and there's wine tastings, dance nights, game nights. They are doing all this member activity. And they keep innovating by interviewing their members and finding out what they need. For example, the very beginning of this, their hypothesis was people are going to want to have a short workout at home, get sweaty, and move on with their day. Well, it turns out that people were pretty fed up and tired of being locked up at home, and they wanted longer programming for more community and more social experience. So they extended their programming to an hour, they added more activity in it, and as a result, members have rewarded them with staying loyal every single week of this. So while Element's competitors have been cratering, they have been rising up and doing better than ever. And this is the kind of thinking that we all need to take, is how do we be ultra relevant and present and get to the people with the most need? And we have to recognize today that this is a fluid situation. The thing that I want to pause and look at for a moment as we look at this is, yes, we're looking at positive elements here, but this is a very real business situation. And there is immense disparity in everything that is going on right now. There are winners and losers, and we can see this as a spectrum of success. At one extreme, we see companies who are leading. If you're selling personal protective equipment or really ice cream and French fries at grocery, wow, you've hit the jackpot. But if you're in restaurant or events and other spaces, you could be bleeding. And so there's these extremes of leading to bleeding. But for most of us, we're somewhere in the middle, from stable to slipping. But where you sit, and the reality of this is, you have hard decisions. Every organization and team has hard decisions to make this year, and will continue have to make this year. I really view that after coronavirus, every business really has one of three choices. You can exit, you can hibernate, or you can innovate. Now, before coronavirus, I would never bring the conversation of exit into this. But if you're bleeding and the possibilities for growth and coming back are going to be drawn out, and especially if you're a family business and this is going to cut into your wealth and your savings, then it may be a moment in time where you need to take your chips off the table and come back later. There is another option to hibernate, but I actually think that's the worst option, because with the speed of change going on right now and everything else, trying to hunker down and ride this thing out isn't going to work. So the piece that I'm really advocating for, and where I think where we have the most opportunity, is to innovate. How do we look for those opportunities? How do we move forward? And to do that, I really look at this in two strategy horizons. The first one is just depending on where you are in the curve or in the stack. If you're in a surviving mode where you're slipping or bleeding, then the first question is really, how do you recover the customers and revenue taken by COVID-19? And you're going to do that by being hyper relevant, focusing on needs, and building up short-term cash flow. And what we have seen already is that most companies are able to do that within 90 days. They may not recover the customers and revenue taken, but they can get to a sense of cash stability. And once you've got that, then comes the real opportunity, which is, how do you slingshot out of this crisis so that you're stronger than ever, so that you take market share, you add new product lines, you grow revenue, so that you're entering 2021 and 2022 with a position of strength and speed and momentum that's really going to be transformative for your business. And the way you need to do that isn't from pushing strategy down onto the organization. It's from a bottom-up approach. How do you engage your whole team to participate in this? This is where ideas really matter. So let me give you one more example of a company that has just done a really brilliant job activating their organization to rapidly recover, and that's Central Smith. Central Smith is one of Canada's largest ice cream manufacturers. And if you've ever had ice cream in a Canadian restaurant, well, chances are you've eaten Central Smith's ice cream. They're one of the larger food services providers. But as you can imagine by that statement, they were definitely affected by the pandemic, especially with the shutdown of the food services and restaurant sector. And so they have been responding very quickly and very well. But let me give you one of their more visible examples, because it is really, truly brilliant. What they had was an overstock of ice cream from the restaurant trade. And two of their young employees, Jillian and Megan, got the idea of, why don't we offer curbside pickup to sell that ice cream? And so in the span of the week, they created a Shopify store, they put it online, and then they reached out to the local Chamber of Commerce and a few food bloggers and said, can you help us get the word out? And they were absolutely blown away by the response, that they had just overwhelming engagement and overwhelming responses. In fact, their first week the store was online, the online retail store was online, it exceeded a standard month in their traditional retail store. And every week has continued to increase and grow. And they've done a brilliant job in activating their community through social media, and the support has been there as well. Because the thing is, your customers really do want you to succeed. But it still comes back down to Jillian and Megan and the team and the innovations that they're taking on. So each week they've been leveling up. For example, around the third week of things, they decided to offer hand-packed tubs. And they thought, well, people may buy it. They didn't expect a huge uptick. So they did 6 flavors and packed 200 tubs. The first day, they got 1,700 orders, and they were forced to hire another person and level up again. And the community has just been rallying around. When you go by their windows, for the time windows for curbside pickup, they've always got a lineup of cars, and people are driving up, and they're putting like 2 11.4 liter tubs of ice cream into the back of their truck, or the back of their trunk of their car. And the internal joke is the 19 and COVID is going to mean something very different at the end of this crisis. So maybe there's a marketing campaign where we can work with Peloton and do an ice cream and cycling kind of thing. But isn't this kind of a fun situation? And at every side of Central's business, they have been looking for these innovations. They've been doing it on the safety side. They've been doing it on the manufacturing side. They've been doing it on the sales side. And what they've seen is a 5-fold increase in demand from the retail side, and they have recovered the revenue that was lost from COVID within 10 weeks. So they have been an incredible story, but it always boils back to the team. If you talk to the management team, they will celebrate the work that is going on with their employees. Brett Stevenson, who is their COO, said, Central has transitioned from an and/or culture to an and culture. And as a result, it's become so much more interesting. Central is a third generation family business. And as you can imagine, with every established family business, there's a degree of rigor mortis that sits in. That's probably the wrong metaphor, but there's the bureaucracy, and it gets sticky and stuck, and people feel that this is my job, not that job, and they have those kind of lines. But what Brett's celebrating is that people say, this is my job, and what else do you need me to do? And that fluidity and that speed that they're going at has allowed them to do project plans and strategies that they would have taken them 2 or 3 years to implement in weeks. This is the moment in time that you have so much potential. But the key to all of this, though, isn't fully in the idea, it's in the mindset. The thing that I really believe in, what I have observed constantly in this pandemic, is that the companies and the teams that are rising have a warrior mindset. And I don't mean this from a leadership perspective, I truly mean this from a mindset perspective, that they are working to conquer this virus. They're working to overcome the challenges, and they're fighting back. That this is more to what we have with our amygdala. We've been put into this state of fear, and our amygdala is firing, and it's that fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's our need to fight that's really allowing some companies to rise up and thrive like Element or like Central Smith, that they have embraced this warrior mindset and pushed it across the entire organization. And today what we see is that COVID has created one of the greatest entrepreneurial opportunities of our lifetime. The playing field has been leveled. Our customers want us to succeed. We have social and we have fund development opportunities. We have resources available to us. You've got everything that you need, every permission that you need to push forward ideas like never before. There is nothing that should stop you. And I know this is the way I felt from the very beginning. I said at the top of this presentation, I feel like I've been preparing my whole career for this moment. Everything I went through in my family business, all the work that I've gone through and the strategy work that we've done at Sticky Branding over the last 10 years. And we've been coming up and rising this moment. But if you ask Ian Skates, the CEO of Central Smith, he says the exact same thing. But with this warrior spirit, there's a bit of this cockiness. There's this thing that we need to do to punch back. I remember at the very beginning of things, I would say, F this virus. This is going to be our best year ever. It's not going to stop us. We are going to rise up and overcome. And we will, and we have. And you have that opportunity too. How are you going to punch back and take the opportunities that are afforded to you? As the economy reopens, there is so much need. There are so many opportunities all around us. Those are those green shoots. And if you look at it, this is what you've been preparing for your whole career. The world needs you and your company more than ever right now. And so it's incumbent on you to be fast, to be helpful. And I'll say it again, the companies who act first and adapt fastest absolutely have the competitive advantage here right now. But it's strategic. There's an old quote that says, in a crisis, timing is everything. But I'm going to say, no, it's really in a crisis, strategy is everything. What you're doing is choosing the green shoots, activating your team, and being deliberate right now to ask the questions. How do you recover the customers and revenue that have been taken by COVID? And once you're stable, how do you use this opportunity to slingshot out so that you're stronger than ever? Winston Churchill said it best, never waste a good crisis. But let me ask you, what will your business look like at the end of this crisis? What I'd like to do at this point is segue. I'm going to hand this back to Constance and see if there's any questions. If you haven't posted any questions, you can post them in the chat. You can post them in the questions component. So let me hand this over to you, Constance, and we can see if anything's coming up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy. You know, I've got so much energy right now. I'm going to go out into my garden and do some weeding and find my green shoots because that was very inspiring. We actually we have a couple of folks actually who are introducing ourselves at your request. So we have Lynn Rennie, who works as a design director and brand manager for Coco chocolate company in Calgary, Alberta. So welcome,
Cool.
Lynn. We also have Peggy Perrin, who is she works with Food in Canada magazine, and we actually talk about looking for green shoots. We partnered with Food in Canada magazine to deliver some professional development for our members because with that big void of not being able to do live events, so we sought out that partnership, and that's worked out really well, and we've been able to create value through the delivery of professional development. I have a question actually from someone who is looking for a little bit more clarity on the and/or culture versus the and culture. Maybe you could you put it into, I know you talked about the ice cream company, but is there something you can put it into a context, perhaps to clarify?
Sure. Yeah, so what we're seeing is what COVID has really done is created permission to see who is on your team and who is going to level up. And there's strange stories that came out where people would rather take the government paycheck versus come to work, and then there's other people who will sacrifice wages or do other things just because they believe in the business and they want to be a part of that team. And so what we're seeing from a culture perspective is, how do you bring people together with purpose, but also how do you create the opportunity that allows people to innovate and contribute? So in Central Smith, you can imagine that marketing would be presented from marketing and e-commerce would come from a specific person. But to give to two recent grads the opportunity to take an idea and run with it and experiment with it, then that takes courage from a leadership perspective. So both the and culture is, how do you get someone to do their job, but also be open-minded enough to say, I will do that as well. But you also have to be a leader in terms of when somebody brings you an idea, you have to celebrate it and help rise it up. One of the things that I'm seeing many leaders do right now is squash innovation inadvertently. And so they're actually destroying the and culture. We can see this, for example, where in the not-for-profit sector, some of the managers have been looking for additional events and revenue streams like virtual conferences. And they go up to the executive director and the board and they present the concept and then it gets squashed. We don't get it, doesn't fit our mandate, whatever it is. Well, the managers might do that, say, 2 or 3 times, but afterwards, they're just going to quit on the job. And we see this constantly inside of organizations. When you're in a state of fear or you're super overwhelmed and busy, it's hard to embrace an idea. But as a leader, we need to take the moment in time when someone's bringing us something, give it the space, give it the opportunity, and maybe even just take a flyer on it and see if it works. What's the worst that's going to happen right now?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the amygdala, and I think sometimes we tend to be reactionary as opposed to, giving some space around those ideas that are brought forward. As an employer, I have to be mindful of that all the time because I'm not the only one with all the great ideas. And
For
I was
sure.
talking to you, Jeremy, immediately before we started the webinar, and I was telling you about a friend and colleague of mine. And you also referenced the event sector and events and conferences, and they've just been decimated. This friend was a staffing agency for conferences, thousands of staff, and her business was all but wiped out as a result of COVID. And after I think a couple of days of commiserating with her husband and business partner, she decided to I hate to use the word pivot, but she did, and she created a new agency that would provide ambassadors for commercial real estate properties so that they could direct people getting on and off elevators and people in shopping centers and that sort of thing so that people respect social distancing. Perfect example of how you find those green shoots.
I love it. So and you look at the model, and again, if you're interested in the worksheet, just send me an email. And
Yeah.
I'll come back in a moment. But it's if you look to the corners, so you're going to look at and that's an example where you have your core services for in a different market, an adjacent industry. You're doing the same kind of thing, using the same people, same resources, and then you're adapting it a little bit, but it's a totally different market. And chances are that service will be available and profitable even when the event space comes back. We know that that industry will come back, so you have your core plus. And that's where we start to actually see exponential growth opportunities after COVID.
Yeah, this is a very innovative sector that the members of CIFST work in, and they're always coming up with new products, and they're always looking for the green shoots. I think your presentation today further fortified that whole concept around looking for, like, really being innovative, but also trying to find new opportunity within sort of that the crisis that we're currently in. I'm just going to see if we have. Let me just see here.
And while you're looking at, I'll put
Yeah.
a comment to this that I think the opportunity for CIFST and its members is immense. When you look at just the rise right now in the grocery channel,
Mm.
it's a 5 to 7 fold across the board in many sectors, especially on comfort food. And so again, it's that COVID-19. The 19 is going to mean something very different at the end of this.
19 pounds.
So we got to do our CrossFit at home
Yes.
and our home workouts and our gardening, and but you look at the stores, flour sold out, French fries and ice cream and other things that are being constantly sold out, and so there's both an opportunity from just a product innovation opportunity, but also category and distribution innovations that there's different ways to get your product to market. So due to some of the closures in retail, there are several global brands that are actually for the first time ever looking at direct to consumer solutions for consumer goods. And so And especially in the United States, there's some really brilliant companies that just skip right over retail and distribute their food products nationally. So you've got this opportunity right now. You've really got to take it.
Yeah. All right. So what do we have here? Overall, would you say that running ads re-pandemic would be viewed as disingenuous and to instead focus on sharing what services, products you're offering in response to pandemic? Is that question clear? I'm not sure.
Yep. No, I agree with that question fully. That
Okay.
if you're talking on coronavirus and closures at this point in the game, like that message has sailed. It was okay until basically April 1st, and then we got it. We know you're open, all those types of things. But there's also exhaustion coming out in terms of
Yeah.
consumer advertising, where people are actually looking for more traditional ads because it gives them a sense of normalcy. So I think where my advice has really been on advertising is you don't need to speak to COVID constantly. The opportunity is to speak to the need, speak to what somebody wants, speak to the challenge so if you look at the Delta, what is the pain or issue or opportunity that they're wrestling with? What's the one side of their issues? And then where do they want to go? And can you tell that story of how to get there? Or can you speak directly to one side of whether it's the need or the aspiration? And if it's in that degree of hyper relevance, because at least for advertising, you've got an opportunity right now, because especially digital advertising prices have fallen,
Mhm.
but the noise factor is so high that we have to be that much more deliberate on speaking in relevant terms after COVID.
Can you comment too? Because I mean, there's traditional advertising channels, but there's also social, and I know you're very active on social. As an association, we're active on social. So, what are your thoughts in terms of how you get your message out there? Do you have an opinion either or?
So I think social is very important. I think your communication should increase, but let's segment this conversation for B2B and B2C.
Yes.
So for business to business, what we're seeing in the data is it looks more like 2005 marketing.
Mm.
That if the only people that make decisions right now are business owners and executives, then you need to be using almost a direct sales approach in order to gain access to those people. Because the problem is, one, they're really busy. They're probably doing the job, three people's jobs at once. So they don't have time to be on social. They're not consuming this stuff, but their decision-making process is also different. So with that, we've seen in the data a 40% increase in executive access, where a business owner or a CEO is more likely to pick up the phone and talk to someone because there might be a good idea. So you've got this interesting realm. But social fills in the space. So it fills in the content. It keeps you top of mind and relevant. For a business to consumer space, then we need to be using digital marketing even more, especially email. Because if you can't bring someone into your brick and mortar store, or if you can't do in-aisle promotions and the things that you might have done before coronavirus, then how do you communicate directly with people? And that means you have to go where they are, and you're probably going to have to use paid advertising versus organic,
Yeah.
because it's very hard to cut through the clutter right now with free.
Yeah, and somebody was asking kind of a question along those lines. They're, I think, quoting you, the marketing is losing its potency. There's too much content, and people are in a state of fear. What is your thought on the value of brands creating videos, IGTV? I'm not sure what that is, online classes at this time. So I think, actually, I love the concept of videos. We're doing a lot of video content for some of our association clients.
Videos has been the hottest thing for the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Instagram TV is IGTV.
Oh, Instagram. Okay.
So Instagram, so live stories. Don't have the data off the top of my head, but it's roughly around 87% of Instagram users have used Instagram stories, and they are posting on a regular basis. The other thing, especially for Instagram, is that consumers will follow brands and want their content. The same is true on LinkedIn, that you can still use organic video, especially live, and get a ton of audience and reach right now. So if you are going to be doing any kind of content, my key recommendation is use video and focus on the feed. Don't make people click out. keep them in the
Yeah,
feed, and then
inside.
use your ads to click to a call to action.
Yeah, great advice. All right, so looking at the time here, we're getting closer to the end.
Okay.
Somebody said a question for you again. Can you expand on the content fatigue being experienced? Actually, it's sort of an outflow of the previous question, but content fatigue being experienced before, during COVID-19, after moving forward. Should it be less content and more visual like graphics? Well, we just talked about video. Is it going back to being hyper relevant to your audience? Um,
So it segues this. My basic thinking here is two parts. Number one, really focus in on the intended buyer and ask where are they. One of the
mhm,
things I found is if your buyers are not sitting on social, then don't spend that much content on
right.
it. Look at other tactics. Do webinars, do executive roundtables, do something else that can connect to them. But in your content, it's who is the individual you're trying to reach and what is going to be the content that gets there. And you're going to have to look at the data and build a campaign for that. So that's a question that it really boils down to your marketing strategy on what you want to do with it.
All right, that's great. Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I noticed your books in the background there, and of course, uh, I have both of your books. They're
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thank
So
you.
this is your latest one, so you can get it in the frame there, and then this is sticky branding, which actually I got this. You were speaking at a conference that I had attended, so I think I got it at
I
that
remember.
time. And
Yes, CFC, I believe.
yeah. So yeah, my commission check is in the mail, right, Jeremy?
Exactly. Those Amazon royalties are huge.
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you. Well,
well, why
listen.
don't I wrap up with a quick thought and I'll
Yes.
hand it back to you.
Yes. Good. Please.
So, so my dad was or is a person who always had these quotes, and one of the ones that has always stuck with me since the very beginning of things is really nothing relieves pressure like sales. And I think that's the truth today. When we're looking at our content, when we're looking at our marketing, when we're looking at their campaigns, there's this thing that we keep trying to do things for free, we keep trying to be generous and all this type of stuff. But really the way we navigate through this crisis is by being hyper relevant and building products and services that we can sell. And so if you use this opportunity today, I think the opportunities, especially for CIFST members, is absolutely immense. So if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me on any of the social networks. You can DM me. You'll find me at all of them at Sticky Branding or Jeremy Miller at LinkedIn. And don't forget, I've got my email here. It's jeremy@stickybranding.com. If you send me a quick email, I'll reply back to you with the Green Shoots worksheet, and it shows you how you can adjust your value proposition and your products and services to speak to a new need. So I really appreciate your time today. Let me hand it back to you, Constance.
That's great. So, Jeremy, again, thank you on behalf of the Canadian Institute of Food Science and Technology. We thank you for your incredibly informative presentation. Lots of takeaways there.
Thank you.
I want to give everybody a reminder that we're hosting webinars every Wednesday for the foreseeable future. And this is the joint partnership we have with Food in Canada magazine. And we have the following dates. So next week, June 17th, we've got Brad McKay, who's the former Chief Executive Officer of Healthcare Food Services, on the topic of the future of food manufacturing post-COVID, the long view. June 24th, Dr. Simon Samogi, I'm probably mangling his last name, Samogi. He's the Arel Chair in the Business of Food at the University of Guelph. And then July 8th, we have a panel discussion with food grads. They are an interactive platform for the industry to attract and retain people in careers in food and beverage. And then finally, on July the 29th, we've got the fabulous Dr. Ricky Yatta. He's the professor and dean of the Faculty of Land and Food Systems at the University of British Columbia. And other webinars are being planned, and we'll just keep adding them to our calendar in the weeks ahead. So watch your inbox for webinar updates. So thank you everyone for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.